Can we do ad hoc? Can you?
Well, we just,
You know, it's not like.
good morning, we're going to start the meeting. We do not have a quorum of the actual committee, but because we don't vote on anything besides the minutes and we don't take any action in committee meetings, we can still have this committee meeting. I thank Dr. Tanya Howard Hall, Ms. Connie Hall, and Mr. Moss for attending. They are not members officially of the Finance Committee. Ms. Grabowski sends her regards. She is with a family member and is watching online and will be texting me if she has any questions. So I will call the meeting to order. We can't approve the agenda, but we're going to run it. And we cannot approve the minutes from October. We'll punt those to January, and I guess we'll just pass the October and November minutes then. So that gets us all the way down to 4. We're moving really quickly here, and we'll have Alvarez and Marsal come up and give their presentation. Thank you very much.
And as they come up, I'd just like to reiterate that our partnership with Alvarez and Marsal is in an effort to ensure that we offer fiscal excellence across the district. I will continue in my regards to be as transparent and responsive to our financial environment, both now and in the future as possible. It is important today for us to lift up the work that has been taking place. I think we have spoken a lot about a plan, which could lead some to believe that nothing is happening. But in essence, there has been a lot happening that we just have not made as transparent and visible to the public. There is still a lot left to do as well. So with that said, I'll pass it on to our partners, Alvarez and Marsal, for an update.
Thank you, Dr. Watts. We're excited to be here today. My name is Sheena Gordon-Roberts. I'm a senior director at Alvarez and Marsal and was a part of the first phase of our engagement, the finance department assessment, and will be leading the second phase of our engagement, which is the opportunity to implement some of the key recommendations from that assessment. So moving into the contents from today, we'll talk a little bit about the goals and objectives of this effort and really the move from intention and the planning that Dr. Watts was just talking about into action. We'll give you a little bit of an update on the progress that's been made and what we see as the path forward from this date, particularly focused on the immediate action essentially through the rest of the calendar year. And then we'll give an overview of the next steps and offer time for questions. So the overarching goal, the district has embarked on this effort to really transform the financial management practices of the district with that focus on transparency and accountability, but also in aligning the financial management and the budget and the investments that the district is making with its strategy and key priorities. And so to that goal, we sort of have 3 key objective areas. The first one is leadership, advisory, and project management. And so that is really the opportunity to advise at the executive level on best practices in financial management, both for the finance department, but really for people across the district that have financial responsibilities. The other thing is thinking about change management and making sure that all the work that we do is coordinated with all of the key stakeholders that are engaged and making sure that they're the appropriate capacity building, training investments, as well as the tracking and monitoring to make sure that those changes that we're making, those improvements that we're implementing are implemented with fidelity and that they're sustainable. The improved capabilities, and so this is really focused on 2 areas. One is the financial modeling, making sure that there is a long-term financial forecast model that gives the district insight into the financial outlook and can be used really to understand how the decisions that you make really affect the long-term financial profile of the district. The second piece that ties really closely into that is a transformed budget process that allows you to look at the programs. We'll talk about it as zero-based budgeting, but really the goal of that is less of thinking about what we did last year and adding a % or 2 for inflation, but really thinking about where we are as a district and where we want to go, and are we making the investments in the right programs and initiatives to get there. The other piece of that is going to be more robust financial management, which happens not only in the finance department, but there are roles that are across all departments in terms of executing that. The last piece is important. You all have made a significant investment in Munis and making sure that you're able to leverage Munis and the other technologies that support the district effectively to drive more efficient processes as well as more accurate and more impactful reporting is going to be really important for the ability to track and monitor against what you're doing from a programmatic perspective, and also really give the staff a more effective way of using some of those tools to conduct their day-to-day jobs. So that's an overview of kind of where we are on the goals and objectives. Moving to progress that we've made in the path forward. One of the things that we've talked a lot about in the week since the assessment is really the need to kind of coordinate between finance, talent and human resources, and the IT and Munis work that's also happening. And so when we think about this effort, there's work that happens in the finance department that isn't necessarily, directly happening in Munis. So thinking about the development of the financial model, thinking about some of those other processes, procurement that happens in Bonfire, and some of the reporting and analysis that'll be done outside of the system. There's also IT and Tyler Muner's things that will happen that don't directly or solely impact finance, that'll happen outside of sort of the finance effort. But there is this nexus of the two, which is why we have this Venn diagram here, to show that connection where that optimized technology that can be used to support finance operations is going to be really key in helping to, lead to be the underpinnings of the finance transformation effort. And so we think that that's a real opportunity to unlock the full potential of the system, as well as of the team that really, puts the work into the system from the back end. Julian, is there anything there on the technology side that you want to add? Okay, awesome. So when we think about the A&M and IT PMO framework, we wanted to give you all a little bit more of an insight into how we will work together. And so from a project management perspective, A&M and IT PMO will work really closely together to make sure that things are happening in line with where they should be in terms of the project plan, that if there are sort of risk and issues that come up, we're working in coordination to address those and mitigate those, and that we're able to provide updates to the leadership and to the board based on the entire portfolio of work that's happening across finance and IT. When we think about sort of the core finance policies, procedures, and processes, that'll be work that A&M's working hand in hand with the finance team directly on. So making sure that the policies are up to date, that they're in line with best practices, that there are standard procedures that reflect those policies and best practices in financial management, and that the processes that are taken out day to day reflect both the policy and the standard procedures, and there's compliance there. When we think about moving into the system alignment, that's really going to be more in the IT PMO space. And so that'll be the place where we will work in coordination with IT to make sure that we are leveraging the systems in the right way to maximize the benefit of technology, to make sure that the work is done effectively and efficiently. From a training perspective, A&M and the IT PMO will work closely together, with A&M doing more of the training on sort of the financial modeling, the budget process, some of those core finance processes, and then IT training on how to use the system to best execute those. And then compliance and monitoring, making sure that these things are done in the way that they've been enumerated in the policies, procedures, is going to happen from A&M, really looking at the reporting, flagging issues with compliance, and being able to go back and course correct and rectify where needed. We wanted to give you all a little bit of an example of how that might work. So we took procurement as kind of a test case here. And so the project management team would sort of coordinate to determine what are the steps and what are the tasks and activities that need to be done to sort of get the procurement process, both within the finance department, but also as it's executed across the district, in line with policies, procedures, and best practices. Then A&M would work with the finance department to really document the policies, the procedures, and the way that they need to be, update anything that needs to be executed, and make sure that those procedures that are carried out in executing the procurement process are done with fidelity. Then we'll work with IT to make sure that the systems that help to support the procurement process are as integrated as possible, limiting the need to do manual entry, uploads to multiple systems, things like that to make sure that things are, again, the efficiency in the process, and making sure that if things aren't happening, that there are controls in the system that help to flag those errors. From a training perspective, A&M will work with the finance team on some of those key processes from a training and train them on them, and then IT will provide the training on how to best use the system. And then A&M would go back and make sure that looking at reporting, doing samples, that the process is actually happening in the way that it's been documented.
Can I pause you for 1 second and just figure out what the O is in Information Technology Project Management O?
Office.
Office, okay.
No, it's okay.
Which I think is important to note, we don't really have a project management office. Most districts with a budget this size would have someone that would be supporting project management. We're currently, as a district, and I hope you all are inferring from this presentation that while this is a finance committee meeting, finance impacts and overlaps with several other departments. This is not a one department thing. This is across many departments. But when you have very large projects going on in a district, it is typical to have a department, a small group of people who are managing outcomes and making sure actions are taken with fidelity. We don't have that currently. Our new Chief Technology Officer, who you'll hear from in just a second, is kind of taking the lead on that out of the technology department and because of his experience. So just wanted to highlight, the O there is office, but we don't have an office. We don't have a project management office in this district. We have a few people trying to figure it out as they go along.
And doing a good job. So with that, I'll actually pass it over to Julian to talk a little about governance and accountability.
So as Julian comes up, he has, I would say he and Stacy Taylor, they've both been dabbling in project management in two different departments. I don't know if it's my intention to implement a project management office, but Mr. Robinson is interested in maybe converting a couple of positions that he has already in his budget, not a new budget ask, already in his existing budget to support project management more directly, but I think we're still grappling with that. We know it's a need, and just to lay it on top of somebody else's work responsibilities is huge.
Thank you. And good morning. And just to, I guess I'll start where you left off when we talk about the project management office. Although it may not be an office per se, we can use the methodology and the concepts around it, which brings us to the conversation about governance. When we talk about project governance, it can't just be a technology-driven focus, especially when we talk about Munis. It has to be something that's district-wide. The district-wide push that governs takes upon several different divisions across the district. And so it is cross-functional leadership, as it says, to monitor the progress, resolve escalations, make strategic decisions, and ensure alignment with the district priorities. And so we pull in different divisions and are their representatives to have more strategic focus across the district, so we can make sure that we are using our resources and for every department and division adequately. We're also going to implement the project management tracking, which probably will include some type of system that we use to build out dashboards so that it will be available for cabinet level as well as board level folks and stakeholders there to monitor those risks and issues, create those talk about those actionable risks and the proactive solutions that we can come up with because of what we see inside of those inside of the system. Then we're talking about the process ownership. I know that when Munis was, from my research, when Munis was first implemented, it was more of a technology push in that regard. So what we're trying to do is to pull out certain parties from every division that take ownership of certain processes that directly involves them, so that they will be, and we'll talk about this a little bit in the next slide, they will become those champions for the cause inside of their department, inside of their division. And it also will include a better grasp on training and capacity building, creating training schedules, which we have a little bit of that now, but having them a little bit more robust and available for those parties across the district that can get that training they need to use the system effectively in regards to their own department. We also want to make sure that we have some early wins in this implementation, so we can show that, hey, we reached certain milestones as part of the process of this full rollout / relaunch / reset that we're doing in regards to Munis, and so we can report back to you all those wins and those milestones achieved there. In the change management, we know that when it comes to change, there's always some resistance when it comes to change, but with those chiefs and champions that I'll talk about a little bit more in the next slide, they will help us to get those champion those causes and more effectively, so that everyone in the department will say, okay, I have this champion, they're pushing us toward a better implementation in regards to our own modules and our own departments.
I think the takeaway that I'd like for you all to have about this slide is that Munis, as you all know, was purchased by the district in 2019. It's now 2025, almost 2026. The rollout and implementation, for various reasons, and I can go through all the reasons. I wasn't here, so I'm not going to play Monday morning quarterback. It did not actually take root in the way that I think folks had envisioned. So as you can see here, the takeaway is a much more deliberate approach, so that this time Munis can really work for us in a way such that our financial reporting can give you the information, give our public the information, and give us the information we need to optimize our work day to day, which is currently not the case. People have created workarounds, and there's a lot of different processes that are taking place that are based on humans. So if a human being drops off, then that process fails to be implemented. So the need to get Munis up and working is such a critical aspect of how we move this forward.
Are there any inherent problems with Munis outside of our human, errors?
Absolutely.
So as we're trying to implement it correctly and fully,
Yes.
are we going to get assistance from?
Yes. So, yes. So no, there is no perfect product for any solution in a school system. And while Tyler Munis is broadly used in many districts, it certainly has its positives. There are limitations, and I could name a few if you'd like me to, but we are actually having them come on November 18th, I believe, to re-engage with the team, to provide us with updates that they've had to their system that maybe we didn't know about, we didn't track, but now these certain modules are available. We're going to have our team, the Chiefs and the Champions, that's a larger, broader group, as stated, represented across different departments, also be able to share with Tyler Munis their needs to see if there is a deficiency in the modules that are offered. Maybe there's been an update that we just don't know about, and they can then respond to that. And then there'll be a smaller group of us that will meet with them to go over a problem of practice that we feel like we need Munis's support with. So we see them as an ongoing support partner. However, I have made it clear to the team that I don't want to be sold anything. Because of course, when people come and they're selling you everything, and it's not until you actually get it that you find out what they said is not really operationalized at the same level. So it's not a sales pitch, it's really to help us better understand how to use modules that have not been used to date. And maybe we can offload some modules that we're paying for that we no longer need. So we just need to sit with them and go module by module so that we can understand what's working and what's not working. Maybe they have a fix and maybe they don't.
Is there a person who you will be able to say, you are Munis, and that's their main thrust of their day, is to make sure that Munis is
We
moving?
will not, and that is not what I want, because
Okay.
currently, it is a very person-dependent. And that's one of the reasons why it's not been implemented effectively. Every department, every single department in this district has a financial piece. So every piece of every aspect of the district needs to own Munis. I will say, Talent and Human Resources and Finance, though, are probably the biggest owners.
Okay.
But everybody in the district has to understand Munis.
Go on ahead, Dr. Tanya Alvaro.
Yes, we talk about the different departments. For some reason, we tend to leave out compensatory programs. This Title I, that's over a $16 million budget. And are we including them with, in this planning? Because I don't ever see anybody from that department attend the board meetings whenever there's different workshops going on. I just don't see them.
Yep.
And we don't want them left out in the wind managing over 30 schools that's receiving those Title I funds.
Absolutely. Every department has to be represented in this rollout. Every department and every school.
Mr. Robinson, do you, along with our partners with A&M, have the capacity to know when Munis might be trying to sell us something versus, okay, I'm just making sure that we got the right people at the car dealership that aren't buying all the bells and whistles that salesperson is trying to, yeah? Okay, good.
Yes, we do, and I personally spoke with them in lieu of the showcase they're coming on the 18th, and I said we do not want to be pitched. We are here to gain knowledge on the system that we already have. So, yeah. To answer your question, yes. And with that, we spoke, as Dr. Watts brought up, that the heavy usage of Munis does lie in finance and HR talent. And so with that mindset, we want to talk about a little bit of the progress we've made up to date. We gathered HR, we gathered finance and IT, what we call the kind of the trifecta, and we actually went through some processes that we already are using. We met together specifically, and we dealt with the one simple process, payroll. And I said, well, on this board, we're going to write down everything, how we're doing the process of payroll on this side. What part is Munis? Are we using Munis? What part are we using Excel spreadsheets? What part is manual? Whichever that, and we wrote all those processes down. Then on the other board, we wrote down what we wanted Munis to do to eliminate all the different processes in and out, the duplications, the gaps that we saw. We said we want to make sure that we stay inside of Munis, and Munis can handle all of these things that we needed to do to fulfill the payroll process. The mindset is to take this process that we created as the customer and take it back to the vendor, which is Munis, and say this is what we want to accomplish inside of the system. Because it should be more of a process driven by the customer that we give over to the vendor, and they build out what we need. And so that's the approach and mindset that we're taking when it comes to this engagement with Munis at this time. So the trifecta, we brought them in. We had everyone write down the low-hanging fruit, critical issues that they saw that Munis needed to respond to, and we developed out of that a pseudo 90-60-day plan that we're going to implement to see what milestones we can capture within these next 3 months or whatever. This was in lieu of A&M coming on board. So now that A&M is here, we kind of gathered together to make that a reality. And so those focus areas that we brought about, again, I wanted to make sure that we be as transparent as we can. We did not want to work in silos. We want to make sure that everyone was at the table to give their suggestions on what the process should look like, what it is now, what it should look like moving forward. And with that effort came out as we did more, asked more questions and we found more gaps, we realized that, hey, we need to see what Munis can do. It may be some process that we pushed out that Munis may can have a fix for now so it can be less manual and more automated. And so that brought about the conversation of bringing in Munis to give us a showcase and tell us, hey, this is what the process looks like now. You may not have been able to do this 5 years ago, but now Munis can. And so with that, in lieu of that information, we're having them to come and do a showcase for us on the 18th. Now I want to talk about the Chiefs and the Champions engagement. What we did was every cabinet member, every chief, of course, is on board with this new relaunch reset. But we also ask every chief to point out a champion in their area that is working with Munis or can work with Munis to be that champion for their specific module or their specific area so that we can assist us with the change management piece. You got to have a champion there who's going to push the cause and push it forward and become that pseudo evangelist of Munis in their area. And then, again, as we spoke about integrating the project management framework, so it's not just a technical push or IT push, it is a complete effort across the district so that as we, of course, bring aboard A&M, we can push it and say, hey, this touches all levels of the district. So this will be assist. This will assist finance. This will assist HR. This will assist operations. And so everyone is included inside of that framework and outcome.
There is a renewed energy around Munis. I will tell you, the Chiefs and Champions meeting was very energetic. People were on board. People understand what our limitations are. I'm feeling really good about the implementation. I'm excited to have Julian's leadership around this. And as you saw in that last column, A&M is here to support. So A&M, as you all know, they are a partner. They'll be a partner with us for the remainder of the year. But we also have to build the internal capacity, and I have to build the efficacy of the team to ensure that when A&M steps out, we are in a good place. And so it's important that our team is sitting alongside them. They can verify and check to make sure everything that we're doing is of quality, but at some point, we've got to transition over to the team. And just excited about Mr. Robinson's leadership in this area, and hope you all understand the trifecta between IT, finance, and human resources. They're all together on this.
Ms. Hall?
I'd like to know what your thoughts are about training the board so that we can be a help rather than a hindrance to the superintendent in terms of knowing what all is going on. We're all very brilliant, but I don't think any of us are really financial experts. What are your plans for helping to train the board so that as this rolls out, we are along for the ride and we're not the, obstruction on the railroad track? Because, our relationship is kind of trust. People get up and speak, and it's our judgment, okay, what they say sounds reasonable, sounds thoughtful. But it would be nice for us to know as much as we need to know. We don't need to take over, but as much as we need to know so that we're part of the help and not part of the hindrance.
Yeah, and I think part of the accountability measure as well, right? So I think, and Dr. Watts, we can talk about the way to implement this, but I think the ability to look at, that executive level reporting, the dashboards that come out, that reflect the financial position of the district, we're absolutely in a position to provide training to the board on that, to say, okay, this is why we use this report. This is what you should be looking for. If you see this, raise your hand, ask about that, right? Because you know, July 1st or whatever it is when A&M's not here anymore, we want you all to also be able to, you know, be critical of what's going on to sort of, you are then kind of in that compliancy to make sure that what's happening, particularly in the outcomes, right, is happening there. And so we'd be happy to kind of, you know, do a session in whatever form makes sense to make sure that when we think about the reports that you all should be receiving on the finances of the district, you know, on a monthly, whatever that regular cadence is, that you know how to sort of ingest that information and how to think about it critically and strategically.
They will be a part of Finance Committee meetings moving forward as we get deeper into this. Sheena and another member of her team will be on hand, as well as our own Finance Department. So you should begin to see more robust reporting. They'll be here with us for questions moving forward, and will be baked into our new budget process. So that, you'll be able to infer a lot of things from that, but I think if you want more direct training, we can certainly provide that.
Yeah, because like right now, we have 5 of us here.
Yeah, that's committee
Four
meetings,
who not-
yeah.
And
I'm thinking, Roger, of course, I'm always thinking how we can get credit for board training. So
Look with that.
whatever, you know, whatever might be able to be worked out, so that the whole board hears everything and, you know. we're not-
And Ms. Hall, tentatively, all of the Finance Committee meetings are scheduled on board days for next year, in the morning before the board meeting. So 2026, currently, all of the proposed Finance Committee meetings are going to occur before our informal meeting of, so that should help. Just that Wednesday of that month, you're just going to come down here and we're going to be together for all day, which should get a little bit more of us here all the time. Yeah.
That's great. Although, don't forget, Roger, and what training credit, because it is good.
I'm on it.
Before I jump into this side, I also want to echo Dr. Watts' comment about the energy of the Chiefs and Champions meeting. When we had that, Dr. Watts is smiling now, but I was like, I left it, I was like, okay, let's go, like everyone's ready. And so I think you all should also feel the energy. I know you weren't in the room, but people are excited about the opportunity to sort of do more with the tools that they have, and really helps to sort of drive to the ultimate goal, which is obviously to improve outcomes for students.
Dr. Howard Hall and then Mr. Moss.
I'm thinking about the different roles and responsibilities within each department and job titles. Have we considered changing job descriptions based on the work that's being involved?
We haven't done that yet, but what I will say is that a part of our sort of expanded scope is to do some of that, like, sort of counseling, really to Dr. Watts to say, okay, these are gaps that we see in terms of, like, this needs to be done, this person's doing this piece of it, this person's doing another piece of this, but right now, there's no one who's clearly responsible for this sort of connective tissue between the two processes. Let's think about how we need to either sort of reassign roles or sort of reestablish some of those job descriptions to account for that. The other thing we'll think of, especially when we get into some of the finance processes, is internal controls and segregation of duties. And so making sure that the jobs are aligned in such a way that I'm not inputting something in the system and that I'm also approving it, right? So making sure that people's roles align with best practices in financial management. So we haven't sort of made those recommendations yet, but as we get deeper into the processes, I'm sure that there will be some of those that we will have for Dr. Watts.
Okay, operative word yet, so you do plan on.
Yes.
And I may be asking something that the next slide is going to answer. We heard a lot at our last meeting about bonfire. Will you also be doing that?
Yeah, so I know we talked a little bit about procurement as the title, as sort of the example
Yeah.
when we talked about the project management framework. We will be taking a look at the procurement process and thinking about sort of the best ways to use bonfire to better execute it. And so we will sort of look at all the, we're like pulling out all the stops on this and making sure that we really understand the details of all the processes. I know we've talked a lot about Munis, right, today, but making sure that Bonfire as another system, like if we think about procurement, it's a way that a lot of money leaves the district, and we want to make sure that those processes, both within Bonfire as well as anything that needs to be integrated within Munis, that we understand the best ways to do that effectively to minimize errors and make sure that those processes are sort of held, again, to fidelity in terms of the policies and documented procedures.
Ms. Campbell?
Are we thinking that Bonfire, I know that we understood the simplicity of Bonfire versus Munis was better for procurement. Do we foresee maybe being able to rid ourselves of Bonfire in order to streamline on Munis, or is that not an option?
Right now, that's not sort of in the plan. Our goal is to minimize sort of new add-on things. We want to see what we can do with what we have right now. So Bonfire, as in talking to the finance department, is right now for procurement a better option than sort of the Munis platform, and it's what people are using. We just need to make sure that people are using it efficiently, effectively, and in line with the way it should be. And then think about, are there ways in terms of sort of having Bonfire talk to Munis that we can increase that capacity?
So you think that might be possible?
We will see.
Okay.
I
That
think
would be
that's going to
great.
be, a thing that we'll have to coordinate more directly with Munis on, so I don't want to make any promises on it. But it is something that we will look into as a part of this. All right, cool. So we wanted to give you an overview of what the next 8 months or so will look like. Right now, we're sort of in this immediate action phase. So this is sort of focusing on those foundational tasks, and some of those urgent priorities. Really focus on increasing the initial capacity of the district, both from the financial modeling perspective, as well as starting to prepare for the budget process, and then some of those key financial processes like procurement, AP, and payroll, where we'll start to really dig into the processes and the documentation that exists. The capacity building will really be advancing some of the implementation of the plans and the templates and the tools that we're developing in this phase, in the immediate action phase. So thinking about how we can use those processes to guide the system advancements. Strengthening the finance team by helping to, by implementing some of these improved and enhanced processes, starting to implement the zero-based budgeting framework, and then starting to utilize, and this is, getting into the idea of how do we think about reporting to inform our strategic decision makings, and so how do we tie the finance to the strategy in a more concrete way. And then the last phase is really continuous improvement. So our hope is that by February, we've got a lot of the working pieces in place. And March through June will be the idea to sort of test those things, make sure things work in places where we're not seeing the compliance or the progress that we need, go back and course correct so that by June, A&M has worked itself out of a job, and that you all, and to Dr. Watts' point, are able to sort of take up the mantle and keep moving, as if we just kind of faded to the background. And I think that transition and change management is going to be a really critical piece of really the entire engagement, but it'll be ramped up in those last 3 months where we're really thinking about sort of the transition and making sure that the staff is in a position to continue operating at the level of excellence and the standard that is expected. So I wanted to give you a little bit more detail on sort of what to expect between now and December, the end of the calendar year. So in the finance department directly, we'll be working to conduct an inventory of all the finance policies and procedures for each of those key processes, and starting to refine any documentation that needs to be refined in places where there isn't clear documentation, creating that documentation and making sure that it aligns with not only the policies of the district, but also with best practices. The second place is that we will be developing that financial model, so we'll be submitting a data request to get some additional information and refresh of information that we already have to start building that financial model that will help project the financial outlook of the district. For the budget process, we have already started developing tools and templates to support that zero-based budget exercise, which we'll embark on sort of the end of this year, early next year. And really, we're thinking about, to speak to training, not only just like what are we going to use and the worksheets and things like that, but how do we deliver it to not only the finance department, but people across the district who will have to give us those inputs and who have to develop those inputs. I shouldn't say give us, develop the inputs that'll drive the budget. And then the last is sort of providing some of that analytical and systems remediation support, just for some of those processes. As we start to see them, we'll really begin to address things, spending a lot of time more directly with the finance department. I say in our first phase, it was almost like a desk audit. We were kind of, we did some work over the phone, but we weren't really here. We'll have a much more sort of in Savannah on-site presence this time around, so that we can really touch, see, and feel what people are doing and be able to advise them in a really practical way. To talk about the IT and the cross-functional work, I'm going to have Julian come up and review those items.
Just to piggyback a little bit on what we said earlier, in 2020, when Munis first came on board, there were certain things that possible things that we would like to have fixed that Munis may not have been available to do at the time. Well, since then, there has been several updates in Munis, which we should expect from a system like this. And so now Munis is able to fix some of those foundational things that it may not have been ready to at the time. Well, so we're investigating what those are. Some we have already identified. And so our thought process is to get those foundational things set and repaired as soon as possible, so that after we get the foundation, of course, set, then we'll be able to build on top of those things moving forward. And the establishment of the project management office methodology, I would say, would assist with that as well. Again, we are looking at it from across the board and not just being a technology push moving forward. Okay.
And I think the other thing that I'll just note is that what we really want to do is, this is, again, as Julian said, it was all iterated, there's kind of this district-wide approach, right? And so we want to make sure that it's clear, not only in finance, not only in talent and human resources, but across the district in terms of what the expectations are for the people in your departments with finance responsibilities in terms of managing the finances that are allocated to your department. And so that's going to be a key part of what we will sort of work to clarify for people, and as we roll out these processes, not just bringing along the finance department, but bringing along all the folks across the district with financial responsibilities to make sure that they are aligned with what needs to happen to collectively manage the resources of the district.
Ms. Campbell?
I see on, I think it's slide 15, it says let's see, develop qualified finance professionals. Will A&M be the ones screening potential candidates or current staff for realignment or reorganization potentially?
So what I'll say is that we will support Dr. Watts in whatever way, she sees fit in terms of identifying that, whether that's to think about job descriptions, whether that's to sort of, we in other places help with interviewing. It'll really depend on sort of from her leadership how she wants to engage us. But as needed, we are, we're willing and able to kind of support in the identification of folks. But when we think about developing the team that's there, that really comes into that training and capacity building piece.
Okay, and I guess with the manual workarounds and there seemed to be a little bit of resistance within the culture to move into more computerized and technologically advanced ways of doing finance, if I'm reading the audit correctly. And with that being said, I do wonder if that's something that with their guidance you plan to do, is just to restructure it or reorganize it in a way where people know, specifically what their job is, if they need to maybe branch into a different area too, so that their job is more comprehensive, if that makes sense. Okay.
And I think, I didn't go into the history, but there are various reasons why there has been, I think resistance is probably a strong word. but really trying to figure out, well, why isn't it being used as effectively? And I've spent a few weeks kind of digging into that piece. You know, some of it just has to do with just inadequate, the training did not really take root. When we bought Munis, we then went to COVID. So people were learning how to use a new technology system from home when the world was spinning in many places and we were trying to just figure out how to educate kids. We're bringing on a new electronic platform. The other piece, and I think the board heard me last week talk about whenever you bring on a platform like this, it's not a light switch. When we think about Bonfire, we purchased Bonfire in August 2024. There was a 9-month training, capacity building process before we even started using it. So we purchased it in August of 2024. It did not fully get light turned on until March, April of 2025, this current year. So when you think about where we are just in the Bonfire implementation, there are gaps because we've only had it for like 4 or 5 months. And now we have to transition everything that we were doing manually to Bonfire, and that takes time. So, yes, we want to build capacity. We want to bring people along. We want to take out the spreadsheets and the workarounds to get to things so that everything is integrated into one system. Right now, I feel that people are excited about that because they recognize the deficiencies in the old process, but they didn't have a response. So you just keep doing what you've been doing until you have another way to do it. And so this is the other way. And I feel like with our approach, it's being more deliberate and strategic. You'll see a lot more buy-in to move forward.
Dr. Howard Hall, Mr. Moss.
Thank you. If you, looking in the lens of a SWOT analysis, when you all came to this district, we hear a lot about the weaknesses and threats. What strengths do we have and opportunities
Yeah.
in lieu of everything else that we've hearing? Or is there anything in particular that we were doing right?
So, yeah, I would say that I think one of the, I mean, from a strength, I think is that people really want to do the right thing, right? I think people want, you know, the knowledge in terms of how to do things better. To some of the things that Dr. Watts brought up, right? Like there have been challenges not of the district's own making that have made it, you know, hard to sort of fully implement some of those things. And so I have myself been really energized and inspired by people's, you know, excitement about finding a better path and a better way to do some of those things. And so I think often when you have particularly a consultant come in, there is a lot of resistance. And I think the idea that people like, yes, we want your help is something that, you know, is actually a really strong position to be in. And I think that also leans into the opportunity, right? There's really I won't say that it's a clean slate, but there's a lot of room for improvement. And I think, you know, better utilizing the system, getting some of these key processes done in a way that's more efficient and impactful, getting a financial model so you guys can use it strategically, thinking about some of these zero-based budgeting really gives you, you know, a better insight into how to use finances to really make the investments that you want to make to the district. And so I think there's, you know, some low-hanging fruit that we hope to get in some of those early wins that Julian talked about, and really take advantage of those opportunities to get some of that buy-in, to start to get some of that momentum moving so that, you know, we continue to get people on board and get people across the district excited about what things look like in the future city. No, I mean, I would say that.
Well, I've seen this as, we are not in financial distress.
Yeah.
We are not. The district is not in financial distress. We are going to make it more efficient for everyone that works in finances, HR, IT, for the future, so that when we pass a budget, it actually lines up to those two things rather than just dollars.
Yeah, I get it, but when you hear it, it's like nothing has been done right. I know we're not in distress, but you didn't say that.
Well, I mean, I think
you
it's
just said, well, the opportunity to grow, and they're excited about learning something new.
Yeah, well, I mean, it is true. You aren't in financial distress. And what I will say is a lot of people bring someone like me in when they are, and it's too late to course correct, right? And so, you know, identifying the need for help, which like finance also raised their hand to say they need help. Like, I know it doesn't feel like a strength, but I think it is something that we should sort of, I don't want to say be grateful, but it's a reason to say, okay, we recognize there's a challenge here, there's an opportunity, rather than when there's a more constrained financial environment, and then you've got to make, tough decisions in a much more compressed and challenged environment, and you are not there, right? And so I think you're able to make some of these process and operational changes from a place of business strength rather than from a more distressed position.
And I would much rather have that strength than a technical strength, right? The people's willingness to come along is oftentimes the hardest hurdle to overcome, right? And so the fact that we have that energy, I will say, while we're not in economic distress now, the future is unknown, yet predictable, given what we've seen over the past few years with rising costs to goods and services, the passage of House Bill 782. We don't really know the impact of what that will be on the district. We have unfunded mandates like cell phone pouches that we will now have to purchase across K-8. So all of those things do not get lost on me. So I do sit in a place where I feel like we are in a good financial position right now. But you all know that over the course of the next 3 to 5 years, if you've looked at the A&M report, we could find ourselves in 3 to 5 years being in a budget deficit. So this is getting us better positioned proactively. I've been in a district that had financial concerns, hair on fire, trying to figure this out in real time. And I will tell you that is scary and not fun. And you have to make a lot of cuts and very difficult decisions without being able to bring people along. I don't want to have us in that position.
Ms. Hall?
I was laughing at an email we got about payroll this month, and it just brings up those little things. They were saying, these are the dates employees will be paid. If you get a paper check, it'll be sent to you in the mail. I think the Christmas check, and you'll get it around December 24th, something like that. And I was just wondering, do we do that as a comfort for our employees? We're going to let you stay in the 19th century and not have direct deposit and get this paper check whenever you might get it? Or is that one of these efficiencies that we're going to have to bring people along and tell them, hey, you're going to have to get that checking account and we're going to direct deposit your money?
If I may speak on that, we have about 6,000 employees, and it's less than 5% that continue to choose to receive a paper check. So approximately 100 to 150 a pay period. We continue to reiterate that message so that during holidays, when we mail out the December checks or in the event of a storm, to remind them that they do have the option to change to direct deposit, but it is their choice.
And that's what I guess I'm asking. Are we going to end up making that mandatory, or are we going to go on leaving it as a choice?
And some are unbankable.
I can't hear you.
Some patrons, unfortunately, are unbankable, Ms. Hall. So some employees are unbankable, which means based on their current credit or other status, a bank will not allow them to have a checking account. So for those employees, we would still need to offer another service.
I see. That includes like our school credit union and all of that.
Yes, ma'am.
I see. Okay.
We did do a campaign a couple years ago and offered an automatic checking account with any employee in the district with the Savannah Schools Federal Credit Union. But we are still left with that around 100 people that
I
choose
see.
just to get a paper check.
I see. Well, yeah, I didn't know, Ms. Davidson, about that situation. I didn't think about that. Thank you.
So next steps, we are actually meeting with finance and the talent human resources today to kind of kick off this engagement. continuing our work with Julian to stand up the project management office, analyzing the available data. So we have some data. We'll be making some additional requests from the finance department to start to develop the financial model, starting to inventory those policies and procedures, participating in the Munis Showcase that Julian mentioned on November 18th, and then validating that catalog of Munis modules and documenting the functional gaps. And I know you all have been asking questions along the way, but I will still open it now for any.
Mr. Moss, I'm sorry that I overlooked you.
No
a
worries,
minute ago.
no worries. So what I was going to say before was, as you guys look at our positions and all, I'm encouraged to hear that you are going to do that and also have communication with HR and how we recruit the talent and being very specific about what kind of talent we need. I mean, it's 2025 and the things that we need for some of our positions have changed because of technology. And, but making sure that when we're recruiting, that we're recruiting the best of those. So I'm encouraged by that. My next comment is, this is fantastic. I would encourage communications because this is, we have been, and I praise us for this, we have been very transparent about the audit and the findings. Let's also be transparent about the progress. So as we come to each part of this, let's make sure that we communicate this with our communications department and that our communications department is very aggressive about getting that word out. Because, we want to be known as a school board that is transparent, but we also get things done. So, all right.
On that communication, we're looking at a very high budget and all those budgeting processes, and they are going to affect every level below that has individual school-based, program-based budgets. And the message, in transparency is change is coming. What does that timeline look like, and have we communicated, or are we getting ready to communicate so that the principal that might actually pay attention to every single committee meeting is like, oh my gosh, what's going to happen?
happening? Yep.
When is that going to happen? Should I even be worrying about that, or is that a?
Yep,
Yeah.
absolutely. And I'm so glad you asked that question. To be honest, that is something that I've grappled with a little bit in my leadership over the past year, because we want to keep the principals focused on instruction and student outcomes. And as you all know, that's the thing that we say, a principal should be a instructional leader. The superintendent should be an instructional leader. In fact, I don't get to do instruction as much as I would like to do. We've tried to keep the principals not as engaged in a lot of this work, but I do realize the need now to be able to cascade this down deeper beyond central office. And unfortunately, our principals will learn how to wear many hats, not just instruction, but talent and finance is all a part of that hat that they have to wear, very similar to me. So just this past week in meeting with Dr. Barnes and Mr. Butler, we've talked about how we will begin to take some principal meeting time, which again, I hate to do because we have principal meetings that are focused on attendance and academics. But as we think about writing a new strategic plan, as we think about this finance piece, I've got to have the time to build their capacity as well. And so moving over the next few months, we will have to shift a little bit so that I don't have to take them out of the building for like a separate conversation. So the principals will see over the next few months a bit of a shift in the content that they're getting in principal meetings to include some of this financial piece. I also just want to reiterate that our school visits also include conversations with principals around finance But we need to bring our principal supervisors, we need to sharpen their understanding of finances too, because they are the ones that evaluate principals. They are the ones that are coaching principals on a week-to-week, month-to-month basis. We have a finance department, but they are kind of not in that regular engagement with a principal. So how are we bringing along our principal supervisors? How are we building their knowledge and skill so that they can properly advise? They know what they're looking at so that they can properly support our principals as well. So there's a lot of cascading that has to be done beyond just the people sitting over there on that side of the room. And again, that's why this takes time. This is not a, oh, we're going to fix it and flip the switch and all of a sudden everybody knows what to do. This is a process.
Dr. Howard Hall?
Dr. Watts, how often is anyone meeting with the Title I director? I know I keep bringing it up because they oversee an annual budget of $16 million. It could be more or less. I'm not quite sure of what it is this year, but they have a significant fiscal responsibility within this district, and I just feel that it's being glossed over. I don't know whether or not they are included within these meetings and whether or not they have a seat at the table.
Yes, and Dr. Howard Hall, you ask that question every month, or every time we talk about finances. And in full transparency, I will just say we're not bringing them along as we should. I don't feel like they are actively having a seat at the table. We are working to do that. I know that department just falls under academics right now and is managed by Ms. McGuire, who is over our student support services. But I'll just say, to answer your question, I want you to keep asking the question, first of all, and press on me for a response. But we are not bringing them along as we should, and they are a group we need to bring along. We haven't brought them along as strongly on our ROI work either, right? They should be a part of that. So that is a department we do need to get more actively engaged.
And I will just add on to that, Ms. Howard Hall, and Dr. Watts has alluded to this. So our program managers, as you are aware, are working, beginning to work more closely with our principals, but more specifically with our principal supervisors as part of the monthly engagement or the regular engagement in conversations around financial management. And so that is taking place. Dr. Barnes and I have been working very closely with our teams to make sure that the Title I budgets are part of those conversations, and we'll also be providing here in the very near future as well information on all of our grants and how we are monitoring those expenditures throughout the year, as well as how we concluded FY25, both with our Title I grants and all of our other state and federal grants, and also discretionary grants as well. So that is taking place. That has been set in motion, but we'll certainly prioritize highlighting those updates along the way in future financial committee meetings and/or academic excellence committee meetings.
I saw Ms. Green. Yes?
This is on. The finance team meet with the grant managers each month. So there's a meeting each month with each one of the grant managers. So that is done.
Right. And when I look at the overall picture, I'm looking at the return on investment academically, because we know that Title I, it supplements. And with these schools receiving the amount of funding that they receive, we want to see a return on investment when it comes to those test scores.
Right.
Because
And that's the body of work that they have not received.
Correct.
They also have not received sort of this work with A&M more directly. So that's the piece when I say, there are engagements happening.
Right.
But we need to be more intentional and thoughtful about how we bring them along, not on the technical aspects of their job, the transactional, but more along strategy. There's a difference to me between
Yes.
strategy and just managing a budget to make
compliance,
sure,
right. You don't have
a
to.
transactional piece.
Right.
Ms. Hall?
there's a very special feeling when you feel that you're sitting at the table. It empowers you and kind of gives you the confidence to say, oh, okay, they feel I'm important enough that I'm at this table, so I can now kind of try to expand my expertise. For the first time at board meeting last week, I saw some worker bees from Capital Projects here at the board meeting. That wasn't, before. And I think if we were to say to Title I people, we need you at the board meeting for those 3 hours, one Wednesday out of the month, so that's going to make them feel more empowered and more seen. And so there are little things just like that we can do that will, I think, enhance and make this easier for us, because people do feel that they're really a part and they're necessary and they're important. So that's just my 2 cents on it.
Agreed.
And we'll note that as well, so that as we kind of think about our processes and the conversations that we're having, that we'll make an intentional effort to include that team. So thank you for looking at that.
We ready for Mr. Robinson and Munis?
Nope,
I think we
he's
sort of
he was-
integrated
he was
everything.
integrated into this.
Okay, so
Yes. It was all,
this is all integrated, okay.
It's all
I just saw that we had a business system. I know that we had talked about a lot of it. I was just gonna have him say it again.
oh, that's fine.
Well,
You have a
that's up to
question?
you, but yes.
Ms. Campbell doesn't want to let you off the hot seat yet.
It kind of piggybacks off of what Dr. Howard Hall was saying about ROI and operationalizing that for the 27 budget coming up. How do you see that happening? Because I know like Mrs. Taylor has been working on that extensively and doing great work. So how are we going to do that with the budget as well? Because makes me excited is a strong word, but I'm much more excited about budget season than I was.
Yeah, no, I think, so when we think about zero-based budget and those outcomes, right, understanding kind of the outcomes, those key performance indicators is kind of the measure of like your ROI, right? So when I'm making those investments in a particular program or a particular initiative, am I getting those outcomes, right? And so that work around the zero-based budgeting and that program-based budgeting effort ties directly into the ROI framework and methodology that has, started at the district. And so in part of developing those budget tools and templates, ROI will be integrated into that so that it's kind of not budget and ROI, but budget and ROI in a way that one really feeds the other.
And so just to keep community expectations correct as well, some of these, if it's the first time that they have been represented on a spreadsheet, we may not have specific ROI data on it yet, but now we have a metric that we'll be using going forward. Is that correct?
That is correct,
Okay.
absolutely. And I will say, to go back and answer your question, Dr. Howard Hall, about strengths, I've been in 2 other districts and I've worked with districts across the country. ROI work is not a common practice, and you can attest to that. I've been in many districts and seen lots of financial practices happening. ROI, we would be on the leading edge of that work across this country. If we get this part right, I would say that is a strength that I would like to highlight. Typically, most places are very transactional in budget creation. They're not really looking, and they don't have an inventory with metrics, and they're not doing all those things. And so, and I don't know if you would validate that, but I'll just say in my experience, we are on the cutting edge in that work.
Yeah, I would say 100%. Budgeting in school districts, much like a lot of state and local governments, is often incremental. And we do what we did last year, we keep budgets flat, right? And not really thinking about sort of, are we making investments and being critical about the way we're making our investments. And ROI is the tool that allows you all to do that. And I think that is something that, we see here that we don't see in a lot of places, whether it's school district or other
even businesses.
government agencies. Yeah, or exactly.
Right.
So.
I hope you're very impressed with our East Blast program. But what do you see as your impact on it?
Yeah, so I think we haven't really talked a lot about what precisely we will do with East Blast. I think right now our focus is kind of on those key processes, developing the budget framework and the financial model. eSPLOS is a huge sort of, I think that's the big piece where we'll come in, thinking about how those revenues are forecasted and how we'll think about those in the financial model, at least in this immediate action space, as well as how we think about it from a budgetary perspective as part of that budget development process. Less in terms of like what our recommendation is in terms of like exactly how you'll use eSPLOS, but how you sort of forecast your use of it and then how you kind of budget for the funds that are there.
I guess what I'm thinking is more how are we best using eSPLOS to relieve our general budget?
Well,
Are
that we kind of saw in the first assessment completely, right? Your ability to use eSPLOS to support kind of capital projects and other places where you may have to use general funds, that is absolutely happening. And so, you know, the presence of eSPLOS and the robustness of that gives you kind of a, I won't say a cushion, but it helps to alleviate the pressure on the general fund to support capital and sort of facilities-based initiatives.
Okay. All right. David, I kind of have a question for you, although we may need to leave it for capital improvement meeting. But I'm just thinking about the fact that, okay, we have our outline of all the work we want to get done in E5, but we have to wait until we have the funds coming in, you know, to be able to do this. Would it make sense for us to think about getting a bond so that we're not just working on one project at a time and can work on several projects, and then as the money comes in, we can easily pay the bond back, as opposed to just kind of having to stretch out as things get more and more expensive, stretch things out rather than try to get as much done as soon as we can.
Superintendent Bringman would agree with you, but I am yet but one board member. I've had similar thoughts. I think we can't get the cart before the horse. We got to get a project manager, and I know that RFP discussion is coming up in the next CIC meeting, and then that might be a conversation that we could. Sean didn't come today, so we'll give him some heavy hitting stuff here. I like that one, Ms. Hall.
Yep.
Because that is a conversation. I know that the district has paid off a lot of their bond debt through eSPLOS. And if we get a good project manager, is that something we can do? Because a lot of it becomes capacity, but also then we always have to remember in the capital improvement people and facilities are really good, operations is really good at reminding me when I start thinking like this, Ms. Hall, that we have to make sure that when we're doing the buildings, we have places to put the kids
Yes.
when we're doing the building. So we can't build everything all at once because we don't have
Right.
enough swing sites.
Right, exactly. So
And
it's
not
not-
all of our sites will allow us to build on site.
Right.
So that was one of the rubs that I had forgotten about, and luckily operations was able to bring me to that knowledge.
Yes.
And go, oh yeah, that's why we can't do every project all at once.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So that's the key point. It's cash flow is one piece of it, but we also have to think about the capacity of the team to be able to take on multiple projects. Where do we swing kids and staff when we need to do multiple projects at one time? So there are lots of variables, not just access to cash that flow into that. Access to cash would probably expedite things a little bit, but I think we do have to think about some of those other pieces. And we wouldn't be able to do every project at one time, I don't think, in any ideal world.
So one on
I
Monday and another one on the next
Right.
Monday.
In no way did I think that.
Yes.
But I do realize
Go
that
faster.
we're spending money as we wait because things are going to only get more expensive supplies and that kind of thing. So, and I guess I also want us to be in a mindset of growing abundance. I don't want us in a cheap, kind of always. Yeah, so penny wise, pound foolish kind of thing.
Ms. Campbell has another question, but then we're gonna.
This'll be quick,
And
I
Dr.
think.
Howard
Oh.
Hall, yeah.
It's like,
And they will have run out of timeouts.
so this is maybe more for Dr. Watts, but I would love to hear your side of this too. We talked about the trifecta of, what was it? IT, finance, HR. Are we also figuring out how to leverage internal audit as we move forward with the succession plan, so to speak, of when, A&M is gone and we're doing a great job implementing all of the things that we've done? Are we figuring out with them, I know we already approved the audit schedule for the upcoming year, but how are we working to maybe have internal audit at the table, since they're uniquely, I think, appropriate for this, to make sure that we're doing it successfully?
So they definitely have a role in terms of assessing a process once it's been put into place, and/or advising on the process on the front end to help us build a process that has minimal risk, or is, no process has no risk, right? There's always inherent risk in anything you do, but to inform on the front end. But our internal audit is not a capacity builder. Like, they can't help finance improve these things, but they are more of a check and balance once the thing has been put into place.
That's more, I think, what I was referring to, not that they would do any of the role of A&M, but that they would at least be alongside for portions like Ms. Hall was asking for us, so that we are at least not completely ignorant to some of the things that are happening, where we can ask real questions that aren't, presupposing we understand something that we don't. But that way, on the back end, once A&M has done their magic and we have all, been compliant and willing, and that we have internal audit coming in and making sure that the processes that we paid and worked so hard to implement are successful. Does
Yep.
that make sense?
And I think the audit committee will drive what those assessments look like on the back end. So absolutely.
Better how it all?
There's just one final thing. Another consideration that we need to remember is that when it comes to federal grants, to not forget about our charter school participation in private schools, because they receive those federal fundings. That's why it's so important, as I said before, about the seat at the table for compensatory programs, because it extends out to our public schools, private schools, as well as charter.
I'd like to thank everybody for attendance. I know that the agenda says to be determined for our next meeting. Hold tentatively the morning of January 14th before the board meeting. And I would ask all the board members here and board members at home that will watch this in their PJs this evening to start thinking what they would like budget finance committee to look like in the new year as we go through this new process, because we won't have a lot of the normal machinations of our previous budget cycle. So what data do we want shared in those finance committee meetings? So that we can direct and be educated throughout the next 6 months leading up into May, June of that budget. Thank you, everyone. Have a lovely day and stay warm.